Yeah, whatever you want to talk about the rest of the hour is fine with me now.
Okay.
I don't know, that was so important to me to get that in there. I just been feeling this like sexual embarrassment is so horrible that, you know, I couldn't get rid of it all this time. So now I feel better.
Good.
Yeah,
Well said. Well said.
Very well said, Jim. Very
Thank
well.
you. Yeah.
And you answered some of my questions, you know, like I had some questions, and then I was going to ask you about your brother, if you thought that you said he died from addiction or
Right.
if
We can talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. And then
You also mentioned something about the nuns with the rest of your siblings that they had.
Well, I said other of my siblings. My
Yeah.
brother, I know for sure. I have one of my sisters I suspect, but I can't really say much. She's a mental health professional, so I shouldn't say too much.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
But
you
those
want,
two, my brother, I know for sure because he used to talk to me about stuff. And my sister, just because of the way she is, I have very strong suspicion. The strength of her denial, you know.
yeah, right.
When you see people denying things so fervently, it's like, thou dost protest too much or whatever.
Yes.
should I go back to gallery view now? What do you think?
Oh, yeah. It's up to you guys, whatever you want to do.
Sure.
Oh, excuse me. If I start snorting and stuff, I forget I'm doing that. Just tell me. That's disgusting.
I love your honesty, Jim.
If it's bad, anything we can take out.
Okay. You'll edit out
I'm not overconfident. Yeah, also, because I've thought about that with my family and just other families when you read these, because so many families had the same thing where there was big families.
Oh, yeah.
Multiple, you know, and I thought about with my parents, when my mom died, they just like gave the finger to my family, to my parents. By then I had left the church, and but they were so devoted to the church. They sent all of us to parochial school. There were 10 of us.
Right. A lot of money.
My dad drove a beer truck for most of my childhood that I remember.
Wow.
And he did any side jobs he can get besides that. So that was full time.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked at I think a vendor at the horse racing track.
Right.
And he was an artist, so we used to just do odd jobs for small businesses, painting their menu or something outside or whatever. And so I didn't see my dad a lot, but they didn't have the money to be paying tuition for 10 kids to the Catholic.
But they did it anyway, right?
They did it because it was a priority, especially for my dad, I think more so than my mom. And 5 of them went to Catholic high school. And then it just got to be too much. So the rest of us went to public school. That's a good thing. And but I thought when they died, or even before that, like, look at what they got in return. I mean, I don't know that my siblings are kind of like what you said. I'm gonna put this on, but
You circled the wagon.
there's a lot of red flags, a lot of signs, and
Oh, okay, yeah.
denial, and it was just prime. My brothers used to mow the lawn, and I'm 8th of 10, so a lot went on before I even remember.
Wow. Yep.
But they used to go help out at the rectory, and a couple of them went through priest, nun preparation, discernment camp or whatever.
Right.
And,
Oh, yeah.
So, it shouldn't happen to anybody. It shouldn't happen to any family. But I'm like, that's your payback for being a good Catholic and a good, you know, think you're making these sacrifices for the good. And then the payback is what they do to the kids, you know, for that. It's horrible. I mean, it's just horrible. So.
Yes, it is.
In that. So, yeah, if you want to talk about your.
Yeah, I can talk about my brother. I can talk about my dad too, the things that I found
Yeah,
out.
that's interesting too, like with your dad.
Sure.
Okay, you're on.
So as far as my brother, I know he got molested by a nun, at least. There are probably other things too. Oh, first of all, the thing with the heroin, I've been realizing now that I'm on hospice, because I'm taking a lot of opiates now, that I think I've been a junkie ever since they did that to me. Because they used to give us the drugs beforehand, you know, the sedatives and hallucinogens, which would make you couldn't fight back, and the hallucinogens made all the masks and things seem like real, you know, like they were real devils and stuff. But when the rituals were all over, they gave us a concoction that killed the pain and calmed us down, and then did something to make the memory go away. So there were probably opiates in that stuff. I'm sure it was morphine or, you know, whatever. So this happened to me for 10 years. And my whole life, I've always been like aware, like how much I love. If I take a Norco or a Vicodin or something, it's like, man, like a relief. Oh, I feel so much better now. And I didn't realize that's connected to that, but that's what I think. I was already addicted by the time they got done doing with me for 10 years. And I think something like that happened to Tommy too, my brother. Because he used to talk to me, like we talked about this stuff, and he read my report, and, you know, he'd go back and forth. There were times where he'd tell me stuff like, yeah, I don't know why I used to have these bizarre, you know, sexual things when I was only like 6 or 7. And then he'd say, and I remember looking, how can I see the nun's thing up her dress when her dress was so long, but I remember seeing it. And he'd say all these things, so he was having little bits and pieces of memory. But then a week later, I tried to talk to him about it, and he'd go, what are you talking about? I never said nothing like that. That's bullshit. It's very typical where he'd actually repress the memory of even talking about it. And I've seen that happen. Actually, with my first wife, here's something. I guess I can say this. Her father was molested her for years. And she was talking to me one time, and right in mid-sentence, whatever we were talking about, some bands or something, you know, we were young, her face just suddenly changed to the face of a little girl. And she told me this little sentence about what Daddy was making her do. And then her face changed back to an adult, and she continued that same sentence where she left off. I mean, it was like, you know, very obvious. And I asked her about it a little bit later, and she had no memory. She didn't know what I was talking about. So that kind of alerted me. And then when my brother did that same kind of thing later, it all kind of congealed in my head. So I think they got to him. They probably gave him the opiates after he was raped. And so he was like me. He was already a junkie just coming out of school. And for me, I don't know, I was always scared of it. Like, it made me feel so good. It was like, I'm scared of this. I know I'm going to get hooked on this shit. But my brother was a partier, and he wasn't a serious guy like me. So anyways, and that led him into his heroin addiction, which
How
also,
old was he?
oh God, he'd been shooting heroin probably since he was a teenager, I'm guessing, because he didn't tell us a lot of the really bad stuff he did. But, you know, by the time he was in his 50s, he was robbing people at gunpoint, I found out. I mean, horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And then he died early. But that's what I think I mean, you use the drugs to take the pain away because the memories and stuff are so horrible.
Yeah.
But it also makes sense to me that they probably use opiates on a regular basis, you know, when they're done raping the kids to calm them down and stuff. And they don't give a shit. So you're a junkie at 13 now. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Boy.
So that's the story of my brother. And but I know for sure they got, because the things he described about nuns and, you know, seeing their vulvas under their things, like, you can't, there
Yeah.
was other stuff going on, you know. And now with my dad, 2 weeks before he died, he was being taken care of by my older sister, and he confided in her. He never told anyone about this his whole life. Told her, I've always been mad at the church because when he was a kid, him and a couple other little boys, the priest made him go out in the woods on their weekends and be intense all weekend long and being on their knees begging God for forgiveness. He says, I never understood that, why they made me do that. And apparently this happened several times while he was a child. And it's like, you never told anybody. All the different times he's been with my mom's head shrinkers, he never mentioned that to them. 2 weeks before he dies, this comes out. Dad, that's not all you were doing in those tents with them priests. There's no frickin' way.
Yeah.
So, and that really explains the dynamic between him and my mom. So he's got repressed memories. Now she comes up having all these symptoms. He can't look at those accurately. He can't be objective about that because those symptoms are reminding him of what he's already buried. Right? I hope this is making sense.
It does.
And all he did, so when my mom started having all her symptoms, which they called schizophrenia, I know that's bullshit. He just drank more and worked more because he had to work and pay the bills and send her to Mercywood Mental Hospital where she was being visited by the same people that were raping her, by the way. But that's the dynamic, and I've seen that in another family I knew about now, where the one of them has repressed memories and the other one doesn't. And for some reason, that's like a magnet that pulls those people together. But then it creates that dynamic where the one with the repressed memories, I mean, they can't see the other one accurately because that would cause them to look at what they've already buried and what they want to keep buried.
Jim, I can speak to that as well. We have, I won't give all the details, but we have a member or a former member of our local snack group
Right.
came to our meeting. She was the oldest of 6 children, and she's from the DC area. She's a medical doctor. This is a medical doctor,
Okay.
psychiatrist, okay, MD.
Psychiatrist? Wow.
Psychiatrist. And she calls and she comes into our meeting and she, tells us about her abuse. Her pedophile priest was her father's, what do they call it? Is like, she used the word like, it was his friend, like
His mentor?
no, a confessor. Or something like, what the
okay.
hell? All right, some freaking thing. She's like, he was his confessor. So they would go fishing out on that Potomac.
Right.
And when she was 5, her abuse started by this priest. So they'd be fishing and then she would go, they would kind of separate, he'd somehow work out separating her from her dad
Right.
and into the woods, and he'd abuse her and rape her.
Yep.
And so when she turned 6, she had a stair-step family. So when she turned 6, he dropped her and went to the next sibling.
Ugh.
And she watched, because it happened to her already, and she was still, but imagine she's now 6 and she sees it, and then
Yeah,
like 7 or 8, whatever. So she
Right.
knew what was going on. She watched him do it to every one of her siblings. And
Wow.
the baby of the family was Down syndrome. And she would tell the story, she'd be in our meeting, she'd say, and then he'd do it to like Down syndrome, she'd bawl. She's like,
Wow.
so that's exactly right. And I said, so what's happening within your family dynamics? Nobody talks about it. She wrote a book. She shared it with her family. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Right.
So I can assure you that what you're saying is true because I've heard it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
we-
bizarre. Any sexual crime,
Yeah.
it's taboo. The cops don't want to touch it. Nobody wants to touch it because it has to do with sex.
Mhm.
And that's what people got to get out is there's a difference between consensual sexual activity, which is nobody's business,
Right.
sexual assault. The
Right.
sexual assault is the police business.
That's right. That's right.
People want to, and that's why all the pedophiles always like to align themselves with the LGBT community. And that's bullshit because
Yeah.
you know, there's two gay people going at it in the bedroom in the privacy of their own home. There's no assault going on.
Right.
There's no crime going on.
Right.
And another thing you mentioned, I have wanted to talk about is, I don't really know scientifically, but pedophiles just don't think the way we do. It's not like this is a normal person, but they just have this one little sexual thing.
Yeah.
They think much differently about everything. They lead a double life. They're conniving. Everything is a strategy in how they're going to do whatever they're going to do. So I don't know. I should probably elaborate on that. I'll write a paper on it or something, maybe make a video.
Yeah.
So there's no way that we can understand why, you know, it's because they have a whole different
Right.
process.
But pedophiles and gay is not the same thing.
Oh,
Oh
of
yeah,
course.
and they are. They're trying to
That's
add a
something-
P. They're trying to add a P to the LGBT.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to hijack the movement.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And because you know, that movement has a lot of support, and it's really kind of like into the point where it's non-issue.
Right.
But that's not going to work, because that's one thing that everybody agrees on is
Right. I wish some gay people would get behind that though, and
back and push back on that, or
yeah, it would be good. See, that's the problem. When we force gay people to live a double life, then they end up being in that group of other people that are leading a double life.
yeah.
Right? And that psychopaths, pedophiles, those kind of people, criminals are leading a double life.
Yeah.
We need to pull gay people out of that, normal gay people that are just not assaulting anybody.
Right. You're right.
That's right. Because you have like Jeffrey Dahmer, you know, like, oh, Jeffrey Dahmer
Yeah.
is hanging
Yeah.
out, like, they're all like Jeffrey Dahmer. And so, yeah, I see what you're saying. The more, yeah, there's, you know, it has to, we should be welcoming, like you were talking about your brother and yourself and others. You know, we need to have, you know, not be judgmental
Right.
drug addicts, or
Again, it's like-
because who knows what led up to that and stuff. So we do have to have compassion. That doesn't mean that we don't have laws and we don't prosecute laws and stuff like that, but we don't know everybody's story. So
Well, it's just the idea. Is there an assault going on? If there's no assault happening, it's nobody's business.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah, like, right, if you're trespassing on your neighbor, if you're trespassing against someone, violating someone else's rights, that's one thing. But if you're not,
Right.
you're not.
and I know it kind of, I mean, I have a gay son. I don't want to think about the details, so I don't think about it. If it bothers you, don't think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple. If it bothers you thinking about it, think about something else. But if they're not assaulting each other, it's nobody's fucking business.
That's right. They're not hurting you. Yeah, we
Right.
were. I think a lot of times I'll just say it's hard to do. I remember the movie Neverending Story, and they said one of the hardest part, they had the kid going through different challenges and stuff like that.
Right.
And they were tough, and he had to pass. And the toughest one was looking in the mirror and seeing his soul, like seeing his inner self. And nobody wants to do that. So many people, humans, if you're concentrating on what somebody else is doing, you don't have to look at yourself.
No, that's
It's just
true, huh?
a distraction.
Right.
So if we did our internal work, like so many survivors do, because you have to.
You have no
To stay
choice.
alive, you have to
The
do
pain chased me right into my soul.
that. That's
There's
right.
no doubt about that. And I want to mention too, I love my son. If I didn't make that clear, me and him are.
Yeah. And
So-
just talking generally, because we all collectively as a society, everybody should, I told a neighbor who was dealing with this with a child, and everybody's got to be who they are. Everybody's
Well,
got
yeah.
to be loud and be free to be who they are. And you shouldn't have to live in a world where it's not okay to be who you are, because then the pain becomes
Right.
and all.
Unless
So,
you are
as long
a
as
rapist.
you're not offending anybody else, you know. 'cause-
Or a
Yeah,
murderer.
like not like, not the pedophiles.
I'm joking, right?
Yes. Make that clear. Mhm. But Jim, I also was wondering about,
Sure.
and just answer what you feel comfortable answering.
Oh, yeah. Ask me anything.
A lot of survivors, their memories came back, or some survivors that I know, their memories came back after they quit drinking.
No.
And so I didn't know, you had mentioned traumatic events, and I had wondered when your memories came back, what the timeline was. Were you sober then, or?
Oh, yeah, I can talk about all that. I've always been sober. My dad was a drunk. My brother was a heroin addict. I've just kind of instinctively been afraid of any drug that makes me feel too good.
Oh, like in the
I don't
prescription.
want to do that again. The only thing that I would have got hooked on was that hashish. That there was hashish that was laced with opium when I was a teenager. Oh, man. If that stuff would have been available, I might not be here right now. But I had it once and couldn't find it anymore. So I'm really happy about that.
That's a good thing. Yeah, that's a good
because
thing.
it was so good. But anyway, besides that, I've been sober always.
Okay.
And what happened was just traumatic things. Actually, with my son, the first memory was 1991. That was also the car accident thing I told you about. And it was when, I had put an ad in a San Francisco paper looking for a partner, a female partner. And I mentioned about different things that I wanted. And I think that, I don't know if you know who Anton LaVey is.
I do.
He's a big Satanist. Him and a lot of people are set up in San Francisco. So one of those people saw it and must have thought, well, we're going to screw around with this guy. Because I told them I'm writing a book called The Paradox Conspiracy and a few other things. And so because of that, and if there's people messing with you and they know where you are and who you are, but you don't know where they are or who they are, it's frightening because it can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
And they were doing the most bizarre shit, so embarrassing, like going into my apartment and changing all my personal stuff, like my toothbrush, toothpaste, underwear, anything personal that goes in your body. I go in there, it's like, this isn't my toothbrush. Where the fuck did this come from? This isn't my toothpaste. I read they've done that to women too. You can imagine being a woman being stalked and you go in and you're, instead of pads, the other things are in there. I mean, so they did all this shit, got me all freaked out. And then my son started wearing all these different satanic type clothes and stuff. So, I mean, it's a really long story, but I ended up worrying about him so much that it almost drove me nuts. And I called the psychiatrist who was specialized in Satanism, and he described to me over the phone the kind of stuff my son was wearing, just from his experience. I don't think he was in on it. He just knew, like the skull ring and all this stuff. The same stuff, the same Alaister Crowley type stuff. So all that stuff built up. And because it was associated with Satanism and all that kind of thing, it finally triggered my memories.
Okay.
So I'm so worried about him. And then now I start having these bizarre memories. And I didn't even know at first they were memories. I mean, I didn't know what was going on. It took several months of having several different memories to start realizing this shit happened at the Catholic school. That was such a revelation for me. And that was started in 91. And it happened for a little bit. And then I was just kind of coasting for a while. Then it's interesting, Father John died in 2005. My real bad memories started coming in 2007. Again, more traumatic stuff, had to do with my job. And it was just the kind of things they were doing to bust the union and to keep screwing with the guys. It was the same kind of anxiety I felt during the rituals. And this is a really interesting one, if this makes sense. My job was to work on telephone poles. So every day I'd walk up and I'd be looking up at this really tall thing and feeling all this anxiety. and it was something really foreboding. And, you know, they didn't train us. They just threw you out there, figure it out, go by the seat of your pants. Well, and I think that triggered, you know, looking up at the priest, especially that tall one. Because I had one day I looked up and there was a telephone pole, but it had a big a transformer, a big gray transformer around it. Well, they wore gray, like rock masks. It's hard to explain. And I was looking up at that, and just all of a sudden I started having the worst anxiety attack I ever had in my life. So it's so weird to think about different things that'll trigger.
Well, it's just so, of all jobs, like most jobs don't have big, like you're not looking up.
Right.
Right. Like
But other job, you could have put a
sort of like the adult that I had to look up, and it represented the company screwing with me, you know, all the anxiety of what I had to do.
Yeah.
So,
Jim,
and
how is your
memory.
son now? How is your son today?
My son? Oh, he's fine. Miles?
The one that got through he was the Satanism, the one that was going through that.
Oh, yeah, he went, because he saw me freak out. And then, I really think all they did was influence him in his dreams. I know that sounds crazy, but if they pick you out, there's methods to do that stuff. Because I talked to him for years about it. He's never had any flashbacks. He's never had anything. So they just kind of influenced him and he was a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, he saw the ring at what was it? What are those places where people sell stuff? It's real big in San Jose in California.
Market.
So he just bought these little things here and there. And it turned out, though, the whole costume was the satanic costume with the ring and the cane with the, I forget, wolf head or whatever was on it. So no, he's fine. And
okay, good.
I've talked to him so many times, and I don't really think they got to him as far as ritual, because it seems like he would have had flashbacks by now.
Well, there's a lot of that goth and kids, you know, at that age were like,
exactly.
So some of that was just a stage, you know.
Exactly.
I was just worried that he didn't get sucked into that.
Oh no, he didn't. He wasn't part of that at all.
Right.
It was just so weird. Like he was suddenly putting Freddy Krueger posters on his wall, and
yeah.
You know, I mean, kids go through that stuff at a certain age, but for me, I was seeing it through the filter of my fear. So.
Right.
But no, he's fine.
I think McVeigh is associated with a lot of the Hollywood or the Marilyn Manson. They had
all that stuff.
Church of Satan membership card or something.
Oh, so, yeah. Anton LaVey is huge in Hollywood and stuff. And Alaister Crowley, you know, those two guys.
Yeah. The same thing. Oh, boy. Right. So you said Father John died. That's your perpetrator in 2000.
I'm sure that was him now. It took me a while it was like too flashbacky to even think about it. But but that was the guy for sure.
It
makes so much sense. He died, and then a couple years later, I started having, because that's very common. The perpetrator dies before the victim feels safe enough to even remember stuff.
But then once they die, maybe when they're dead, maybe that helps make it safe.
Right. Whatever bond was there is broken now. So
okay then.
The psychic bond was broken.
Yeah. Okay.
But,
can't hurt you anymore. They can't hurt any other kid.
Oh, exactly. Right. That's pretty common. Once the perpetrator's dead, then the victims of the ritual stuff can feel safe to start remembering and
it's pretty incredible, the brain or the mind or however that works, the physiology of how the memories come out a little bit at a time to what you can handle, or at an age where you can handle it.
Oh yeah, that's something to emphasize too.
Yeah.
Right, and that happens with soldiers too. And that's the opposite of false memory syndrome, by the way. But people actually remember, it's tiered. They remember the least objectionable things first, and then over the years they end up with the most. And it's real common with soldiers, like, 5 years after they get back, they start having nightmares, and they remember a barn. They had to blow this barn up, and there was a bunch of animals. It felt so horrible. 2 years later, they start having the same thing, but now they remember there were kids in that barn. And then they remember there was a family. So it happens in stages.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with ritual abuse, where, you know, you remember the absolute horriblest thing last, which in my case was the sacrifice of that baby.
Mhm.
And that's another thing to mention too, like when you say sacrifice a baby, what that really was, it wasn't some religious thing. They just, every year, they had to make it a little bit worse than the year before. It was just the shock and awe value to completely neutralize me, right? I mean, it gives them all this feeling of power or whatever, but I think mostly they're doing it to keep that victim under control. Because once that happened, was I going to run to the police and tell them I just witnessed the baby being sacrificed? I mean, that memory was repressed so deep that, and once you repress that, everything else stays repressed.
Or if they do it to the baby, why wouldn't they do it to you? Yes. So
Well, like all that, yeah,
they made it
exactly.
clear that they were willing to do that. They were willing to.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's no conscience at all. Torturing small animals and killing babies. But yeah, using the word sacrifice actually plays into their hands when I think about it, because it gives it that illusion of religious whatever.
Absolutely. I was just gonna say, that's like saying abuse. I was abused. No, you were raped. Sacrifice. No, that baby was murdered.
Exactly.
Murder.
Exactly.
You
Yep.
call it what it is,
Yep. But that's part of the reason they get away with stuff, because people don't want to hear about rituals because they think of all the magic and blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yes.
That's all smoke screen.
Yeah.
And it may be that some of that actually does give them power. It gives them power because their conscience is gone. And when you don't have a conscience, you can look out at people who do have a conscience and manipulate them very easy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can see things differently than other people see. So, but that's a good point, though. It's not a sacrifice, it's a murder, period. And the reason they did that was the shock and awe value to send my psyche even deeper into repression.
Jim, it makes me think how helpful and beneficial it would be if you were able to connect with those other 4, 5, 6 kids, who are now your age.
I have no idea how.
I know. And who knows if they're alive, how they survived.
Even one of them would be amazing because the validation.
I know. I mean, it just makes me think about that boy, because that's a whole lot to remember, and to deal with. But yeah.
And there's a band. I found a band. You had mentioned Father Livius.
Yeah, Father Livius. I'm sure he was in on it, but I can't say for sure because he was a disgusting human being. He really was.
Well, I haven't told you this, but when in doing a little digging, there's a band from the Detroit area, and they wrote a song. I think, Lisa, was it about Father Livius? I have the lyrics. And so why would high schoolers, or I don't know, write a song about a priest in their high school?
Well, it depends on what the lyrics are. Maybe they love the guy. I don't know.
That's right.
There was something about that. I didn't see the connection exactly. There was something, I had some doubts, but.
Yeah, some might have been I think they called him Father Livy or something like that.
Right.
But, going back to them killing the baby, I think when you said your testimony first, describing that.
Right.
I think you said that the priest, it was like he was drinking the spirit of the baby.
Again, I think it was all theater, but yeah, he was standing over this. I'm going to start crying.
Oh yeah, and it was too much.
It's okay. This should be on film too. But the baby was cut open and the body gives out heat, just like a surgeon and he was acting like he was taking it in, like it was a fine wine. It's hard to explain. And I mean, it was a stench. You cut open a person's guts, there's a stench.
Yeah.
That's how he was acting. And I don't know if, I think these people just improvise too, whatever pops into their head at the moment, just to fuck with me. Maybe he was. Maybe there's more going on, more psychic stuff that these people know about. But yeah, it was horrific. I mean, everything they did was horrific.
Yeah.
But he was enjoying it. He was enjoying whatever was coming out. He was taking it in.
It was a feast for him.
Yeah, a psychic feast, whatever.
Yeah. unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Oh, it is unbelievable. That's why they get away with it.
It's just, yeah, it's hard for for semi-normal people to comprehend.
Even fathom it, right?
Yeah, because nobody else would, like, you wouldn't even, like, it's unimaginable in our imagination, a normal person's imagination, not that everybody's normal, totally normal, but, and then add to that, I mean, we're already beyond this, but that a priest would, like, because growing up, we were taught that they were holy.
Right.
We were brainwashed that they were holy. They were the holiest. They were not normal humans. They were better than normal humans.
Exactly.
That's what they told us. That's the whole song and dance that they tell us. So now when we find out that it's not just that people do this, but priests and nuns who are supposed to be the best of society, the best of humanity,
Right.
have been doing that. So we know that that's all a bunch of bullshit too. So right now.
Well, and you can look at it from the other perspective that if you're a pedophile and you're looking for an easy life and a place to hide, it's all set up. The buildings are there.
No accountability. Yeah.
All you gotta do is do a couple masses. Everybody loves you.
Yeah.
It's a great gig.
Your superiors are doing the same thing.
Oh yeah.
So if you do enough, you'll be promoted. You'll be a superior.
Right.
If you get caught, you'll be transferred and no one will know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
And you
Exactly.
can choose state to state where you want to go. So if you were, not good at being if you were good at being caught, you go to a state that don't pay attention or smaller. So
Right.
you wouldn't be out there. The laws may not be able to protect you.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And it seems like they're so bold.
Yeah, all pedophiles are. It's amazing how
Yeah.
bold these people are.
They're so they have no fear of getting, I don't think they have fear of getting, they know, it's almost like they have a permission slip.
Right.
Don't worry about it. No one's gonna get, no one's gonna, you're never gonna have to worry, because most people would, even if you did it, you're committing you can get the death penalty, for this, but they have no fear of that. So why didn't they have any fear? I think now we're learning, and not just priests and not just in the church, but beyond that.
Right.
Why? Because a lot of the people that would normally go after them, who would be trouble for them, were also maybe had skeletons in their own closet. So,
Oh yeah,
so,
that's huge too. Blackmail and all that stuff. That goes
yeah,
on.
yeah. So,
And you remind me of that priest in Ohio who he got convicted of murdering that nun.
yeah, I forget his name.
And they gave him the burial of a priest. The Vatican gave him a priest burial.
I know.
Gerald.
How did this guy feel so comfortable doing that stuff?
Yeah.
How did this? Was it just one guy out of the whole thing? He felt comfortable enough to murder this nun and carve satanic symbols into her body, and then go about his life.
He did her funeral. He celebrated her funeral.
Oh, okay, so you know who I'm talking about.
But that's like you said, and that's what I thought of when you said that your mom's perpetrators went to visit her in the hospital.
Right.
So
yeah.
They're not only bold committing the crimes, but they're bold to, I know a woman who, her perpetrator married her and her husband. He did.
Wow, right.
So, it's another kind of abuse, I think, in when they're not even trying to hide.
Right. Well, they feel invulnerable. That's part of the mentality of when you're raping somebody, of these people. I mean, for you and me, like if you beat up a squirrel or something, you'd feel like an asshole. These people feel like gods when they do that stuff.
Yeah.
They feel invulnerable. That's why they do it. It's just a weird mentality.
Yeah.
I think they're just born sick. I mean, a lot of them probably were abused in the same way when they were kids, which is no excuse. But I think some people are just born wacky. Their brains aren't wired right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
it's a small percent, but I
Yeah.
don't know if wacky is the right word, but you know what I mean.
Well, like the whole nature, nurture, like how much is nature, how much are the combination
Right.
of something didn't go right somewhere along the line. And, but we can't have a society where that's going on.
No.
Kids,
Oh, and that reminded me of something else. I just thought of it, just popped in my head, but there's a word called sociopath. We're not supposed to call them psychopaths anymore. So we have a politically correct, compassionate term we're supposed to use to refer to these people who torture animals and rape kids. They're victims. Oh, she's just a crazy bitch.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? How did this, who's in charge of this culture that's putting this stuff out there?
yeah.
You know, for what it's worth. There's a lot more examples of that. I just can't think of them right now.
Yeah, it bothers me sometimes when something happens and the people on the news have all kinds of adjectives to use.
Right.
That makes it kind of takes away the accountability, like that's evil or might be evil or a monster. And they act like monsters. They act like subhumans, but I always think that if we're going to change this, if we're going to make things better and try to stop what's going on and prevent it in the future and stuff, we have to try to understand why people do this or
that's true.
what we need to do as a society. So I say it's easy just to call people whatever, but they used to be a kid. I don't know, unless we have subhuman aliens. We might. But if they are,
I don't want to humanize them at all.
I know that's right. And I'm like, if we
those kind of people.
Yeah, their behavior is subhuman.
Right.
Whether they're human or not, their behavior is subhuman. And but if they're, I guess I could say, if they're in a society as a human, living society as a human, then we need to have the responsibility. Humans are doing this to other humans, and why are they? And
absolutely.
And if they're not humans, or they're living like subhuman people doing heinous things to other people, then they cannot live among our society.
Well, yeah, the whole thing about revenge and that, to me, I'm beyond that. It's just, what do we do to prevent this? How do we, and basically, legally, it may be a nightmare for the cops because they don't want to grab someone who's been falsely accused. But the mental health community and people in general should at least be looking at this as it is. So these victims could actually get the help they need and the support they need. And then, beyond that, I don't know why. I just think because the mentality of someone who becomes a police officer, I'm not saying anything bad, but they're protecting legitimate society. That's what they're protecting. That's what they're there for. If there's a criminal in a suit and tie who's got a lot of money and a beautiful house, the cops don't see that guy the same way they see the bum on the street who robbed somebody's purse. And they should. We need to have completely neutral law enforcement, obviously, but it's just the kind of people who become police officers. I'm not saying anything bad, but that's the mentality they have. They identify with legitimate society. They identify, like you mentioned, the big, huge, beautiful cathedrals that give that feeling of legitimacy and power. That's the kind of person that ends up becoming a police officer. And so they don't want to go after the people that they revere.
Jim, I'd say, I don't think that's just police officers. I mean, I just think that there's a human nature. They want to look, you look up to someone with power who's, I don't want to cross that guy. Maybe he'll get me a job someday. Or, I mean, it doesn't have to be a police officer. I don't know. I guess I don't.
Well, I was just thinking maybe a little bit more, like.
Well, they're probably.
Anyway, it's just off the top of my head.
Yeah, they probably have the personality then maybe law and order, like, and rules.
Yeah, that kind of thing too, right?
systems and stuff like that. So maybe
Yeah.
a certain general personality would do that, but it is, yeah, so that's a foundation, like that should be a foundation of any civil society is, in America, equal justice under the law.
Well, exactly.
On the Supreme Court, they have it etched above equal justice under the law.
Right.
And we all know, everybody knows, we all know, right? There's no such thing right now as equal justice under the law. So, because
No.
otherwise, these statute of limitations that they still have in many states, it's protecting serial child rapists.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And so how is that? And so why would any lawmaker, state legislator vote for such a law? And I know the argument against it, mainly from the Catholic Church, is, well, part of them is they say they'll go broke. If there's no statute of limitations, it'll break the Catholic Church financially. And
why is that?
you know what else? They also, yeah, that's like they're admitting their guilt, like they're
Exactly.
guilty. We're gonna lose all these lawsuits before, so we can't even have a law that allows that to happen. But also, I think the big thing is, Jim, is the they use the false memory.
Right. Well, that was started by the CIA too. That's just 20 years old.
Yeah, the CIA.
It's horseshit.
Yeah, and you know the Bernardin case, Joseph Bernardin,
Yes.
Cardinal Bernardin
Yes.
in Chicago. He started out he was in South Carolina. Horrible person, and then he came to Chicago as the Archbishop and then Cardinal, and he was in charge of the USCCB for a while, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops or whatever. So he was very powerful, and he used to feed. I heard. He used to be the one that would feed the Vatican names of people to promote into the bishopdom. So they were all, I'm sure, real terrible people. But
Kate, what's the story though? He had a young man come forward and say he was abused, and then he recanted.
Yeah, well, no, he didn't recant. So, but that's what the media says. So what happened was, a guy named Stephen Cook said he was, I think he's on video saying that Cardinal Bernardin raped him when he was 17 years old. He was a seminarian. He was in the seminary.
Right.
Bernardin was involved in a ring, tri-state ring, maybe, or Illinois and Wisconsin, maybe Indiana. And it was a pedophile ring. And so Stephen Cook came forward and accused him of raping him. And then the media, I think it might have been California at this time, but the media, it came out a little while later that the media said that he recanted, and that Cardinal George was going to be such a saint and have a private meeting and a mass, because Cardinal George was going to forgive Stephen for falsely accusing him.
Oh, for God's sake. Yeah, that's all.
And so Cardinal George was all of a sudden a saint because he had.
Wait, George or Bernardin?
I think it was a setup, and they were going to use this case because they use this case all the time as the false memory, as an example of what happens. Priests can be falsely accused because look at what happened to Cardinal George.
Right.
And I heard there's another.
Not George, Kate.
I'm sorry, Cardinal Bernardin.
Yeah, I was like, there is a Cardinal George.
Cardinal George came after him. Cardinal Bernardin, there's other information that I heard.
I even remember hearing that, who's that author, Andrew Greeley, he praised Bernardin or something. I was like, what? So I thought he was,
Yeah, a lot of people thought that there was a payoff. And Stephen had AIDS, and that they the idea, the best guess, I guess, was that the church made him an offer,
Yeah.
and he was dying anyway, and his mother would be taken care of financially. You know,
Right.
she would have everything with the payoff, that the mother would have everything. But the thing is, the media was complicit, in my eyes.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
they're saying he recanted, and all he said was something like, I don't want to misquote him either, I'm just as bad. Something like he couldn't rely on his memories or something like that. But he
Yeah,
never said.
that's a setup.
Yeah, that sounds like, I mean, it sounds totally mafia, Catholic Church. And that they needed an example. They do this, I think, with cases going up to the Supreme Court too. They need a case to be an example, to set the
Right.
precedent in the future, to cover themselves for future cases. So this is a case that they use all the time. Well, I went to a SNAP conference, it was a while ago, but the speaker was talking about Cardinal Bernardin. And then I spoke with her afterwards, and she said, when I said that, I noticed the crowd went quiet. I go, in Chicago, they still love him. They still think he's a saint. And they don't know. And I said, well, the media hasn't covered. You have to dig really deeply to find out the fact that he didn't. It's another priest there. He's in Chicago now. He's at a parish now, I think. And they did the same thing. So they just play the media. They tell the media what words to use. The media is compliant with the church. And so the public is totally ignorant of what's really going on unless they're really digging. So
yeah, they're always going to come up with strategies to defend themselves. And that's one of the big ones. I think I mentioned that, falsely accuse somebody and then blow it up in the media.
yeah. Yes, you did.
It may not even been falsely accused. It may have been real, but either way.
This other priest, they had a big news conference. I think it's still on YouTube. They had a big news conference, so he was never. And what they said then is Chicago police or the Cook County Sheriff's Department, the police cleared. So their word was cleared. The police cleared him. Well,
wow.
We know, just in law enforcement, the police don't clear people. They don't say they're innocent.
Right.
They decide to prosecute the case or not, depending on what they have.
District attorney.
And and I think the truth was that there was still an open case. They hadn't done any. They were still, if they had more evidence come forward, more victims come forward. But the whole, and everybody at the parish, we went to leaflet, said, oh no, he's clear. What are you doing here? You're harassing him. Leave him alone.
Right.
He's been cleared by the police, which is a total lie. So, yeah, they have, but I think we're making some progress.
You just got to keep plugging away. Like I said, it's an ongoing battle. There's not going to be one day where everything's okay. You know, it's just an ongoing battle, probably forever.
It's chipping.
Yeah.
There's always going to be pedophiles and people that are, like I said, people that lead double lives, you know, the psychopathic type mentality. And if that's only 5% of the population, they're always going to be there. And again, that's why we need to pull the gay community out of that, where they don't have to lead double lives, and get them on our side.
Yeah.
Just for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. And just everybody, just separating the civilized people from the uncivilized people.
Right. Well, people who assault people.
Yeah. Who are uncivilized. So, this was really good. It's a really good conversation. Debbie, anything else? So. Debbie, you've had quite a week yourself. So
yeah, poor Deb.
Yeah,
it's just one of those weeks that happens, but it's good to see you guys and what you're doing, Jim, and so much of what you say is So true. You're right on spot, and how everything's blown up and done by design. You've always said that. They do the
Oh, yeah.
On purpose.
drugs,
Yeah.
the abuse, and then there's no consequence for murder, rape, or whatever.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
It's horrific, and it ruins lives forever.
Right.
And but again, like you said, there is a difference between the pedophiles and homosexuality, where people sometimes get that confused. That's
Exactly. And the pedophiles love that confusion. They're going to keep
Yeah.
pushing it as much as they can.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's a choice, where rape is actually murder of the soul, I always feel,
Oh, yeah.
rape, especially a child and stuff, but it's just sad. It's just sad. But we keep plugging forward, so we'll make
Exactly. Exactly. Another thing just popped into my head too is there's big money in it too.
Oh,
That's the big problem. Child
Oh, the
trafficking
money.
is billions and billions of dollars. And there's so many crooks out there that don't give a shit. So
It's
that's another thing you're up
surpassed-
against, you know.
yeah,
It's surpassed, I've heard, drug trafficking and weapons trafficking.
Is that right now?
Human
Wow.
trafficking is the big money maker of the world. And you know what? I believe that the Catholic Church is a big plays a big role in that.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Traffic
again,
worldwide.
Yeah, they have all the facilities, they have cars, they have buildings, they have places to hide people. So naturally, those crooks are going to look at that and
Yeah,
find a
yeah.
way to worm their way in there and
Yeah.
be part of the church and, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
at
Yeah.
least.
That's why that's why it's so important that well, I don't know, we rely on civil, and I've done this a long time. Why are we asking the bishop? Why are we requesting that the bishop does this? He's the problem. He's
Oh,
the
of course,
problem.
of course.
So why aren't we, and I always thought that, well, some of us always thought that there should be, like there was a 9/11 commission.
Right,
A commission, and there's been commissions. There was one for the 2008 recession or whatever, housing crash. There was a
Right.
commission, either a presidential or congressional commission for that.
right.
And at least 12 other countries have done that. Many have done more than one. Why hasn't the United States got Congress or president appointed? In a lot of those commissions, I just think they're part of the cover-up.
Well, yeah, of course.
They're not legitimate. So, but other countries like Ireland, Germany, Canada, I think many countries have done comprehensive investigations, at least for, well, we can see like in Iowa, they don't take it seriously, like if Iowa's, but boy, wouldn't it be nice to have a legitimate, I just don't know if it's ever going to happen, but investigation where all the survivors can come forward and have it all in one place, like one place. I guess bishop accountability is there, but then that's only a fraction because of the high
Right.
bar they have to get perpetrators named on there. So we'll see what happens in the future, but we're doing what we can do, and we really appreciate you guys.
Exactly.
Yeah, telling
And as long,
you're doing your part to.
well, I'm trying. As long as you expect disappointments, then it won't disappoint you. when it happens.
That's right, you can. And
They have
teach you.
strategies, like I said, they'll pull the rug out from under you right at the minute
Yeah.
that you think you're getting some momentum going. So,
Yeah, we get trained. They train us to expect disappointment because they keep living up to it.
right.
So,
Well, we keep going, guys. We keep going. We keep
Exactly.
fighting. So that's strength, you know.
that's right.
We're not giving up. All right, well, I'm kind of fading out here. So
Okay, yeah.
good to see you, Jim. Good to see you, ladies.
Yeah, we'll see
Michelle,
you guys.
and
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Yeah.
All right, we
Have a good
appreciate
rest
you.
tonight and a good
All right.
week. Yeah.
yeah.
You too.
Good to
All
see
right,
you,
bye.
Jim. Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.